When I was a younger lassie and was hungry to sample the world, I passed my 25th birthday in Edinburgh, Scotland, with my best mate, Joan. Yes, we had going to Inverness on our agenda and certainly sighting monsters, but we were ever attuned to the march of history. We spent most of our first day at the battlefield of Culloden. And that night, much later that night, Joan, what time is it? Oh, no, we've missed our curfew. And although the youth hostel proprietor was not a mean man, he told us to come back the next morning at 7 a.m. We all knew that frost was expected. And so we turned away from the two-story edifice that would have been our bedroom for the night, and we turned out to the park-like setting in the mist with the eerie light from one lamp that was to be our only company, save the hard planks beneath us on the park bench and the encroaching frost. We bade each other a good night, and as soon as I closed my eyes, scenes from the battlefield reverberated, and I had all kinds of visions. Some say in the dark of night, anywhere near the battlefield, that one can hear the clashing of metal on metal, the swords. And others say, oh, they can smell the acrid and smoky smell of the cannonballs and the musket balls. Others say they can hear the moans of surprise as the felled men go to meet their maker. We all can feel the presence of those bones of more than 1,000 Highlanders of the army who fell there and are interred. And in the fateful year of 1746, April 16th, the hopes and dreams and lives of many of the Highlanders were shattered. And those dreams were about an independent Scotland, and for many, they still are. And after that, I had a hard time sleeping. But as it got colder and colder, I could see Bonnie Prince Charles coming in, Bonnie Prince Charlie, called the young pretender, who was leading the troops with no experience. I could see visions of him. Oh, and I began to hear conversations. Now, the Jacobite rebellion had begun just the year before in earnest, but had really been a 50-year span of Highlanders and Catholics in France and Catholics in England and Scotland, Ireland, wanting to put back a Stuart on the throne. And Bonnie Prince Charlie was a Stuart, but he wanted to put his father back on the throne, the monarchy. His father was called James. And James in Latin is Jacobus, hence the name Jacobite. So this was some of the trouble and disruption. And it was in protest of the very acts of union that happened in 1707 that united unwillingly all the Scots, the Irish, the Islanders, and the Brits into one amalgamated Britain. I began to hear conversations possibly held in the cottages around Inverness before the battle. One such conversation. Jamie, how do we know you're going to come back to us? All the Brits are amassed 10, 12 miles away at Nairn. There are so many of them. There's so many of them, you must know. Karen. Don't worry so. Right now, our leader, George Murray, is strategizing with the clan chiefs that we will retreat up into the hills where we have the advantage. Our men retreating up into our hills where we were born, they cannot be defeated. Oh, well, you and Ian take care of each other now? We will. We always do. And the morning before, April 15th, the Scots, the Highlanders, the Irish fighting with them, a couple French, couple Lowlanders, couple Brits who had turned away from their own, were amassed in the field. They were amassed in the field, not in the hills, because Bonnie Prince Charlie's high command could never agree. And okay, George Murray said one thing, but Quartermaster O'Sullivan thought the opposite. He wanted his men, his troops, to stand there in the flat open plain where truthfully the British had the advantage, them with their cavalry. Well, there they were in inclement weather like it was the night on the benches, getting soggy, standing in the boggy ground, waiting for the Brits and waiting for the Brits. They did not come. Yes, they were some miles away at Nairn. They were celebrating the birthday of their commander, the Duke of Cumberland, who was George II, the monarch of all Britain's youngest son. Now, that smacks of nepotism, but in all fairness, he was thought to be the Duke, although young, a courageous fighter and a good leader. We'll give him that. They were having a birthday party. Apparently, enough food got in, more than adequate, and the brandy, oh, the brandy was flowing. And so Lord George Murray decided he would have the advantage if the troops, the Highlander troops, would march just the 10, 12 miles and surprise them, give an attack in the dark of the night. So they were marching. And then Ian and Jamie were among them. Ian turns and looks at Jamie. There are so many men in back of him. Jamie, rally the men. Put on speed. We must get there before the dawn. Ian, look at us. We cannot rally speed. Look at us from all the retreats. We are exhausted. We are cold, hungry. When's the last time you had a meal? Jamie, we have to get there before dawn or we've lost our advantage. And we cannot turn back. If we do, we're done for. And turn back they did. For Lord George Murray saw that the men would never make it before dawn. And so coming back, some of the men just fell here or landed there in a ditch or so, or climbed a hayloft to go to sleep. And some of the men just rooted around Inverness, foraging for food. And so it is said that perhaps several hundred of the Highlander army never made it to the battle at Culloden. So it was 2 o'clock, and the British, who were easily outnumbered the Highlander army, had been letting loose volleys of grape shot and round shot right into the Scottish line. And the charge, the order to charge for the Highlanders, the fearsome Highland charge, that order was not given for 1/2 hour. We don't know if the Bonnie Prince was invisible. We don't know if someone else gave the order. It was late. It was too late. And so when the charge happened, charge! The Highland army charged into the Brits and they were mowed down. 1,000 of them perished. The entire battle took 46 minutes, 46 minutes that changed the course of history, especially for the Highlanders. And all those who were left alive were fleeing for their lives, and the Brits pursued them with a vengeance and would for several years. Now, Ian and Jamie were fleeing for their lives, and Jamie on the way up to the hills stopped at home. Karen, tell Jamie, tell Ian that I'm going to the hills as far away as I can possibly get. Take this food, Jamie. Godspeed, precious brother. And with you, dear sister. And then wrapped in the dark mantle of night, late, Ian tumbles in the door, wounded. Ian, let me bathe and dress that wound. You must stay for that. Karen, be quick. I'm going to a ship in the port that's going to the colonies before I am captured and sold as a slave and thrown on a slave ship. Karen was quick. And God protect you, Karen, and your family, and may Jamie be ever immune to capture. We don't know if the three of them ever saw each other again. I changed from one fetal position on the bench to another fetal position. And the occasion of that was that the frost had settled in on the planks of the bench, on the tips of my shoes, on my gloves. Joan, is it time yet? No, not enough time. We fell into a fitful sleep, dreamless. And then at 7 o'clock, we went into the hostel. We were admitted. We went upstairs and we gratefully got into bed with all of our clothes on, including our shoes, for it was not yet time in the season for the hostel to turn on the heat. We needed our rest. We were going back to the battlefield to glean all we could about the Battle of Culloden.